Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for November 14th, 2022. What I'm going to be discussing today is what you're not being allowed to hear if you live in the transatlantic region. For weeks, all we heard in the United States was about the coming red wave, the Republican sweep that would take away the Congress from the Democrats, put the Republicans in control of the House and Senate, and prepare the way for the return of Donald Trump in 2024. Well, the red wave did not materialize. Now, what explains this? Was it vote fraud? Was it bad candidates? Was it the polarization caused by Donald Trump? Well, I have a different view. Neither party discussed reality. They didn't discuss what was on people's minds. More importantly, they didn't discuss the real developments in the world. And as a result, the voters had no clue as to what these parties would do and were dependent on falling back on profiled polarization, red versus blue, right versus left, and so on. No answers, no solutions. There were large numbers of people who voted because voters were looking for something, but there was a great dissatisfaction overall for the people who went to vote, and they were voting on the basis of negatives, either hating Biden or hating Trump. And the lack of positive intelligence, that is a real view of what's happening in the world and what could be done, what potential there is, that could give people optimism, that was what was lacking. So, for example, we heard that if the Republicans won the House, the blank check for the war in Ukraine would end. Well, the Republicans will win the House, but there's still a party of war hawks. They're still committed to defending the role of the United States as the sole superpower, the world's policeman. And there are illusions that Russia is losing the war because of the weapons we're pouring into Ukraine. So I don't think that's something that's going to happen, and I'll get to that in a moment. What about the fight against inflation? Will interest rates continue to go up, risking chain reaction debt defaults? Or will they drop, leading to ever higher inflation? Do you know where the candidates stood on this? Do you know how many of them talked about the Federal Reserve and its low interest rate policies as a major cause of inflation? And by the way, how's the Green New Deal working for you? Can you still afford to heat your home, or to buy gas for your car, or to feed your children? Look, the point is the system is broken. It's beyond repair. The neoliberal system based on deregulation, privatization, and a globalized economy run for the benefit of speculators and global corporate cartels, this is heading toward a terminal collapse. Now, let's go back for a moment to the decision of the U.S. and NATO to sacrifice the lives of Ukrainians in a goal of weakening or destroying Russia. Do you believe the hype that Russia's been defeated? Do you trust the hints there are that some, including in the military, are looking for a way out of the war, an exit ramp, looking for the possibility of negotiations? And furthermore, what can be expected when President Biden meets with China's President Xi Jinping today? Will the U.S. continue to move toward a confrontation over Taiwan, or are there common interests that will be at the base of our relationship? As we've been reporting, and as I just stated, the era of U.S. global domination is over. But no one's told the American people that. The American people still believe that the U.S. can dictate policy to anyone, that we are a democracy, even as you look around at the ripping up of democratic norms. Censorship is an example, the silencing of debate and opposition. So the question then is, what's going to happen in this period ahead? Will the U.S. move toward a situation where it will be part of an agreement between sovereign nation states for mutually beneficial cooperation for development? as proposed by Helga Zeppler-Roush and the Schiller Institute? Or will we face more war and depression, leading toward global depopulation? I would argue that the greatest crime of the criminal cabal behind the Unipolar Order, with its demands for a Great Reset and a Green New Deal, is that it is denying every citizen living in the transatlantic world of the knowledge of the actual great transformation which is taking place, not toward a global banker's dictatorship disguised as a so-called Great Reset, but a rebellion against Wall Street and the City of London, a rebellion against the idea that there's only one model of development, and that's the one that benefits the largest banks and financial institutions. The rest of the world is tired of that. They're looking for development. There's been no significant development of the poorer countries under the neo-colonial system of the International Monetary Fund, dictated and dominated by the banks of London and Wall Street and enforced by the military of the United States and NATO. So we're not going to have a global bankers dictatorship, or if we do, it will end up wiping out the planet. Instead, we're looking at the discussion process underway in such institutions as the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Eurasian Economic Forum, the African Union, the Organization of Islamic Countries. We're seeing it in terms of such things as the shift of Turkey toward Russia, as opposed to NATO, of the Saudis looking toward China and offering to accept yuan for oil, of the various agreements that were made by countries of the global south to reject the sanction policy against Russia and continue to trade with Russia. So it's there between the lines, but you're not being told about it, or you're being told that it's a threat to your way of life. What's threatening your way of life is the collapse of this system, which cannot be sustained. Now, let me just give you one example. The comparison of productivity growth, which used to be the strength of the U.S. economy, the constant bringing online of new technologies to increase the productivity of our labor force. Well, look at the status of labor productivity in the last decade, from new figures released from 2010 to 2019. The United States productivity increase was an average of 1.1% per year. China, 3.9% per year, almost 4 times the rate of productivity growth of the United States. And that rate has continued to drop in the United States. For 2022, for the first 3 quarters, the rate of productivity growth is negative. It dropped by 1% for the first time in 40 years. Now, some people will say, well, that's because of Biden. It's not just Biden. Biden is a continuation of the policies of Obama and the economic policies of Trump. We did not see an increase in productivity gains under Trump that were significant because the lower tax rates and the credit that went to corporations went into debt payment. It went into buying stocks. It went into speculation. It did not go into physical economy. That's the problem with neoliberalism. Now, the European Union is equally dysfunctional. The European parties are collapsing. You look at the Tories in the United Kingdom, the series of scandals that's rocked that party. You look up at the breakup of the coalition in Germany, the disagreements now finally surfacing between the Greens and the Scholz government, especially over the issue of the support for the EU NATO policy of economic decoupling with Russia and China, which will destroy the German economy. So we'll be covering these events in the next days. I'll be covering them. There's an ongoing conference of the G7. Helga Zeppler-Roush participated in what was sort of a pre-conference for that in Bali of the non-aligned nations. We'll have available on our website her speech there. But what I'm saying is you have to seek out new sources of information. We provide it. We're giving you the real picture of what's happening in the world and what the potential is. And one example of that was the conference we had last Saturday. The Schiller Institute sponsored a conference on the Russian-Ukrainian scientist Vladimir Vernadsky, whose work was a central feature in the work by Lyndon LaRouche in the last decades of his life. And you can see the video of that conference. It's fascinating to hear people from all over the world discussing how ideas, how human creativity, how imagination is what fuels economic development, and not the so-called market. So it's time for us to make sure we're getting accurate and real intelligence instead of brainwashing and information warfare from the enemies of the Western nations. And by enemies of the Western nations, I mean London, Wall Street, and the corporate cartels. They're the ones holding back the knowledge that you need to make informed decisions and to organize your fellow citizens to get a better world. So thanks for joining me today. I'll see you again tomorrow.